Dungeon Doom Hands.
is the trap
Let's
that we're going to be
talk
talking about
lore.
tonight.
A podcast.
Yeah, that was
a while ago.
rough.
It was a while ago. I'm Spencer. This is Chris. We're going to talk about common mistakes for traps while you run them or you play them. And I feel like, Chris, what are some pitfalls that we make, some mistakes we make, common and also non-common, which I can get into, mistakes for traps?
Well, the thing that I find myself doing almost every time I put a trap in front of people is I find a trap or a type of trap and I'm like, all right, where in this hallway or in this room can I do it? All right. And just try and plug random puzzle pieces in, and it always feels like it doesn't fit. And the questions that players have about it, trying to get around it or avoid it or disable it or some way, it always feels that it doesn't feel natural because I haven't planned out all the ways that they could go around this.
I think that you and I have similar issues. As a DM, I find that, I'll have a wire or some leaves on the ground. Let's just take the background, for example. There's some leaves over here, right? And you're walking through the forest, and what am I supposed to do? Do you have the characters roll a perception check every time there's a trap? I don't think so. I think that's a common mistake. I think that you, as a dungeon master, you put the trap in the place and the trigger in the place, and if the guy doesn't trigger it, let it go. I think that's one of the main mistakes. We try to force that trap. Roll me a perception check. Oh, there seems to be something mysterious about the leaves. No, there isn't. Those are leaves. Who planted those leaves? Those leaves were planted by people.
Hidden as it could be.
Right. Like if I was a hunter laying down some trap, I wouldn't have mysterious leaves. I would have some leaves.
You would make it look natural.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when you trigger it, that's when I would say, Chris, go ahead and roll me that dex, Now, it also depends on what kind of trap. So sometimes I feel like there's my opinion, one of the ways we get into making a mistake when we run traps is we don't necessarily run. There's a different process per trap, I think. So it's like, if you see a trap, there's a wire. Well, now we're going to get into sleight of hand. Can we, disarm that?
Well,
is it a big area? I don't know.
Let's think about what is a trap. A trap is a hidden obstacle to injure, stop, bar someone from moving from point A to point B.
Right.
That could be a room.
Yep.
That could be a pitfall or something, but it's always supposed to be that surprise.
Right. I think if your character were to see a trap, and he was a hunter, running through a forest, to your point about preventing the thing from happening. Let's just say it was an area, like maybe running a trap has to do with like the area, and maybe that area it really is determined, and who's perceptive to the specific trap is the nature guy, or the guy who has a history in rock climbing, or I played a stonemason once upon a time ago. Maybe that guy has a little bit more say to how stones look, or the architecture of the statue when you're pulling the right triggers, and so on and so forth. So maybe instead of worrying about like the dice that you're rolling to keep the players engaged in the storyline, aka the trap, maybe we as dungeon masters ought to know the player character a little bit better. That's my suggestion. So it would be like, you're a you're a bard and your character also comes from the forest, and there's a lot of
Hmm.
forest things going on. I'm bringing
Yeah.
up, but maybe the trap, you know, you're where the character's from, where the character has been, and the things that he's done. So I feel like, let's say Lone Star. Lone Star was the
Hmm.
captain of a ship for a while. So if there's a trap on a ship, maybe he has a lower check to make for a
Yeah.
particular trap on a ship. You know, maybe run it like that, where you keep that engagement, because like at some point, the way that I've been running them, I feel like I'm doing a disservice to the game when I say give me a perception check when you're walking down a hallway. Like,
Well,
now you
it,
know there's a trap.
well,
Now everyone is sneaky deaky.
I think you bring up a point of letting the play determine what what you reveal.
Right.
Say it's like, all right, we're walking down this hallway. What do we see? Then you say rolling perception or whatever. But instead of, yeah, I'm gonna walk down this hallway, and you look in your book and you see your notes. So, yep, there's two traps. All right, let me see if they see these. It's like
So,
gives it away. It's like if the person's like, I'm looking for traps, then yeah, you check
right. If
for how well they're hidden.
the character says I want to investigate, then
Mm,
let them investigate. You
mm-hmm.
shouldn't. The DM shouldn't be the guy that says, "Give me a perception check or investigate."
Yeah,
Let the players do that. If they just decide to run in like Matt, best trap I ever
like
ran, best
I
trap I ever ran,
yep. Well,
boom, you know.
I mean, I did just clear the previous hallway very methodically, and
Yes.
then it's like I'm just going to go down this random hallway by myself. Hey, sometimes it happens.
Yeah, sometimes it happens. But also, you know, not to get too into it, but like
Hmm.
traps are sometimes not necessarily set to keep you away, but necessarily sometimes it's necessary to keep something out or back. So
Yeah.
there are two ways of. So that's a good.
Well, you bring up another great point of the design of the trap. What is the
Right.
purpose of it?
Right.
I mean, a trap for a wizard's or like uh some hoard of gold or a bank or something is going to be different than a tomb.
Right.
Whereas a tomb doesn't want anyone ever coming in. The bank, there will be ways for someone to access and bypass all of those traps without getting injured every time.
Right. And I feel like the dungeon
Or
master.
the traps face the other way. You have to face them when you leave.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Um, the way that the dungeon masters run them, the way that at least I run them, that I feel like is
Hmm.
is a little bit. Maybe I should change it. I think it should switch. Let the players be the ones who do the initial. I'd like to check this out, and
Hmm.
then you can sort of tell that story through the investigation. Tell your story through the investigation. Oh,
Hmm.
these traps, the arrows are pointing that way. Obviously, whoever set this thing up wants to keep you from getting to the other side, right?
Yeah.
And then you can elaborate on that and how to disarm it. Maybe the guy doesn't do it. Roll me a dex save. Um,
Or you trigger the trap
right,
and you get shot in the back.
right.
And the arrows all shoot towards the direction you're going.
And I think that like if you're planning a dungeon map with a bunch of traps, have different traps. Maybe you can say, okay, this hallway is going to have a trap, but depending on how good of or I don't know, maybe I was going to say maybe how good you are at dungeon mastering, but you can change the trap midway. But I think
Hmm.
you set the trap. If they
Yeah.
trigger it, then they trigger it. If not, you keep it as real life as possible.
Hmm.
I've probably walked past like a trap in my life and didn't even know that there was one there. Whether it was like,
You
you
walk
know,
past the open manhole and didn't even, it's like
yeah,
luckily you thought you saw someone coming, you took that step to the right
you
just the
know,
last moment.
right. Or it's just like, someone throws a water balloon and you just happen to walk down the wrong hallway and you get hit by it. Well, that wasn't necessarily
Yeah.
a trap, but it's similar aspect. Roll me a dex save, you fail. Um, I just think that sometimes traps are pushed onto the players as if it is a story,
Hmm.
and I think sometimes that's not the good thing. I think that if they make it past the trap, Chris, roll me a perception check. You just realized you guys stepped over a wire and there's a trap. This trap is indicating that there's a mummy past, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
And like that's a cool, that's engaging. So there's ways to keep the players engaged by not
Or
triggering a trap.
the whole party's waiting at the next intersection. You're lingering back. You look back the other direction and see clear as day a trap or a sign that says "Turn around, trap
Well,
ahead."
you know, um, and some traps are harder to run than others. I think that
Hmm.
the
Well,
wire traps, anything that disabling, I think that's cool because like, okay, guys, who's the disabler guy? Who's going to be, Aaron
mm.
or Matt used to be the guy. Um,
But
but
also, I think you brought up a point of let the trap be a piece of the story, not the story. Let
right,
it tell the story of like the types of traps can inform the intelligence of the people inside,
right,
or the design of the facility, or other information, and let that be ways to drop nuggets of
right.
foreshadowing.
If the trap is meant to make everyone less HP, is if it's meant to like
Okay.
just damage
Well,
people,
burn resources.
or burn resources,
Yeah.
then you can certainly figure out how to do that by just
Hmm.
some other way, but don't let the trap hold back the story. You know what I mean? It's like
Hmm.
sometimes when you do a trap, it's like now the guys fall in the pit because you
Hmm.
forced them to fall in the pit, or
Yeah.
like they found the trap or they walked by it and you didn't get to tell the story of it. So now, like
Hmm.
the next thing seems a little bit out of place. Just tell the story. If they run by it, they run by it, and that's it. I had a dungeon master once. He he set up this whole, and I was playing with Matt, who plays Ignis.
Hmm.
Every other Monday, you can zoom in and watch this. He had this whole sand pit sort of laid out and like intricate puzzles with traps and all this stuff. And Matt decided to take that. What was that? What's that thing where
The
the
immovable
immovable?
rod.
Yeah, yeah. He took the immovable rod and sort of
It was doing
just got.
the Ninja Warrior
It was hilarious.
all the way
Yeah,
across.
yeah. And then someone else turned into a spider and swung people from the immovable rod across, and that was it. And the dungeon master was like, you know what? And this was an experienced dungeon master. He was like, I'm giving everyone some XP for that. That was amazing. I spent all week on this room, and you guys got through it in 5 seconds.
You
Like,
bypassed it in five
congratulations. Yeah,
seconds.
and
Yeah.
that's a cool reward. It's a cool reward
Hmm.
because now the dungeon master has the ad lib because he didn't expect you guys to get out of that fast.
Yeah.
But also, you used your real life like resources to get
Mhm.
through it. So like,
Yeah.
play it. My recommendation, I guess, would
Play it
be
as
to
it lies.
play it as it lies, but also like, if we were in that dungeon,
Hmm.
you're not necessarily going to trip every trap or you're going to or like see
Well,
everything or whatever, but I'm assuming that Chris, if you saw a trap and you got by it, you'd at least give it a once little glance,
yeah. Well,
and
it's
you know
well. There. We've said a number of times that players are incredibly creative, no matter what you
yes.
throw at them.
Oh my god,
So
yeah.
they're going to think of and think of you as a player. You're going to think of whatever crazy idea that you can imagine to not take damage or to avoid this thing that looks scary. That's why you play. That's why you fight.
Yeah,
So to risk something to hopefully survive and not die as a
yes,
character.
for
So
sure.
that's let that be a trap. Let that 66 go flying in there
Right,
unless you see it and can disable it or whatever. People have characters are death is so hard in
right,
5e.
right. but also like yeah, but the way and for our podcast in my
Hmm.
perspective, I like to push that player engagement and like I'd like to have a seamless everyone's engaged all the
Hmm.
time. It's rarely possible, but you can do things to certainly help. And this is one of them. It's like, you know, you the traps don't have to cause damage to create player engagement. In
Yeah,
fact, in my
true.
opinion, when you get stuck in a trap, it disengages a lot of people.
Hmm.
And if you run by it and notice it and it tells a story, there's danger ahead or there's something you missed or maybe there's something you missed. Maybe,
Hmm.
you know, there's this language on the trap that says, don't lift if blah, blah, blah. And then
Yeah.
now you have to purposely set it off or like the
Or
root
there's a
of.
bridge that says weight limit.
Yeah, or there's a button that says "Do not push,"
Right.
you know, and like there's tons of ways to tell a story, and I think
Hmm.
traps is one of them. And I think that telling the story through a trap is one of, if not the most underrated portion of playing a trap. And
Yes, I agree.
that is my Let's Talk Lore trap segment. We're going to come
Hmm.
back to traps. I'm assuming it's sometime in the future,
Yeah.
not necessarily reasonably soon. But if you're going to take anything away, real life, play traps, and players are hard to kill because
Yes.
you know that's you're not going to do that
Very
with a
hard to
trap
kill.
unless you're Matt and you just run into
And
a
take
six a six D6 and people don't realize it's a six
the
D6 and they just off
D6s.
themselves. Yeah, that's but
So I think he was very much done with Pliskin.
yeah,
He's
that's
like, I
tough.
nearly died to a beholder. I'm ready. I'm ready to
He's like,
to find someone new.
I don't want to be a wizard, and he just runs down a hallway. It's obviously littered with traps. I mean, you guys, you know, but that's a story for another
Yes.
time. Anyway,
Mm.
let's talk lore. Hit that button, subscribe. I'm Spencer. This is Chris. We'll be back with more. I hope you learned a little bit about traps. Um, use that in your next session. Peace.